For months, Sarah's friends visited our home, praising her and hinting she deserved more than I could give. They gossiped about their husbands' wealth, vacations, and flashy cars while she listened in silence. Then one day they told her outright I wasn't her match. She didn't defend me. Something broke in me that moment. I walked out and never looked back. My name's David. I was married to Sarah for 8 years. I never imagined it would end this way. But looking back, I see all the signs I missed, the subtle shifts, the quiet betrayals that led to the day I packed my bags and walked out. Sarah and I met in college. She was different then, supportive, kind, full of dreams. We shared hopes of building a life together. But after we married and bought a modest house in the suburbs, she started hanging out with a new group of women. They were all married to men earning much more than I did. Their days were filled with shopping, fancy lunches, and conversations about their husbands' careers, vacations, and luxury purchases. Over time, Sarah began comparing our life to theirs, and I sensed her embarrassment when she talked about my job as a high school teacher, despite her earlier admiration for my dedication. Their group included Rebecca, married to a lawyer, Jessica, whose husband owned a restaurant, Maria, married to a doctor, and Linda in real estate. Every Tuesday, they'd gather, calling it their coffee club, but it was really just an excuse to gossip and boast, often making me feel invisible or inadequate. Initially, Sarah tried to shield me, asking me to stay late at work or run errands when her friends came over. But I noticed the changes afterward. She'd be quiet, moody, talking about needing a bigger house or a better-paying job. When I asked what was wrong, she'd brush it off and go to bed early. The first clear sign came about 6 months ago. I came home early from school with a migraine and found all 5 women sitting in our living room, designer bags and expensive clothes around them. They discussed their husbands' salaries, cars, and vacations. Sarah saw me and blushed. She introduced me to her friends, though I'd met most of them at neighborhood parties. Rebecca sized me up disapprovingly. Jessica nodded without interest. I felt like an outsider in my own home. I asked for water and slipped upstairs, overhearing snippets. Sarah claimed I was having a tough day at work, but Maria suggested I was lazy because teachers get summers off. Jessica commented on her husband's recent purchase. I wanted to explain that teaching is demanding year-round, often with unpaid hours and second jobs, but Sarah quickly changed the subject. I laid down, haunted by their judging eyes. Things worsened. Sarah invited her friends more often, and she stopped hiding it. They came when I was home. I'd catch their subtle digs, jokes about teachers' salaries, comments about their luxurious lives, side-eyes when they looked at our modest house. Rebecca joked that teachers just don't understand real money, and Jessica's eyes flicked to Sarah's modest wedding band, implying I was holding her back. The worst was the unspoken message. They hinted I was a fallback, a consolation, prize. Sarah never defended me. Instead, she seemed to agree, talking about successful husbands who made all the difference. She'd sigh about our house, which was comfortable but not grand, and I saw her longing for their lifestyles. Tried to confront her, explain how this made me feel unwelcome, disrespected, but she'd dismiss me, saying I was oversensitive or didn't understand women's conversations. Yet, I couldn't ignore her avoidance and her joining in on the envy and comparisons. One day in March, I came home early again, with another migraine, only to find her and her friends discussing a charity gala. They described dresses, donations, and their husbands' achievements. I made a sandwich and overheard Rebecca lament that not everyone could afford such events, Jessica laughing about priorities, and Maria remarking that some women have different expectations. My face burned. I wanted to say something, but before I could, Sarah joked she sometimes wondered what it'd be like to be married to someone more driven. Her tone wasn't joking, it was revealing. The room grew tense. I watched her, silent, listening as her friends encouraged her to consider whether she was with the right person for her ambitions. They suggested she deserved more: success, excitement, luxury. Sarah sat quietly, avoiding eye contact, not defending me or denying their implications. That night, I left for a walk, trying to process what I'd heard. When I returned, Sarah was in the kitchen, pretending everything was normal. I gathered my courage and asked if she believed I was less than her ideal life. She hesitated, then admitted she sometimes wondered if we wanted different things, that her friends' opinions had planted doubts she couldn't shake. In the following days, she became more distant. She spent even more time with her friends, sharing stories of their husbands' latest achievements, vacations, and bonuses, always comparing, always measuring. I started staying late at work or avoiding the house when they visited, but I could still hear them, little comments about how stressed, tired, or unsuccessful I appeared, as if I were a problem or failure. One evening in April, I arrived home from a faculty meeting to find Sarah sitting at the kitchen table with real estate flyers, brochures for luxury cars, and vacation spots. Linda had given her ideas about upgrading our lifestyle. I looked through the materials, realizing they all involved debt or expenses we couldn't afford on my salary. I told her I loved teaching and believed in it. I wasn't leaving my career just to impress her friends. If she wanted more money, she should get a job. She snapped back, claiming her friends' husbands didn't expect their wives to work because they earned enough. She accused me of lacking ambition, implying I was content with mediocrity. That night, we argued until midnight. She said she felt embarrassed when her friends talked about their lives and wished we had more. I told her I understood her frustrations, but her way of handling it was destroying us. Her friends were feeding her insecurities and turning her against me. The next morning, the silence was deafening. Something had shifted. When I arrived home early again, I found her and her friends in session. They stopped talking as I entered. Rebecca looked nervous, then said they'd been discussing Sarah's unhappiness, that she was deserving of a partner who could match her ambitions, that she was stuck, and maybe it was time to reconsider whether we were right for each other. I was stunned. Sarah sat silent, avoiding eye contact, not defending me, or denying their accusations. I asked if she really felt that way, if she agreed with her friends that I was less than her. She looked at me, her voice trembling, and said she didn't know how to answer, that she'd been thinking about whether we wanted the same things, and that her friends had made her realize she might need to reconsider. They all told me she was young, beautiful, and smart, and that she shouldn't waste her prime years with someone who didn't meet her standards, that she deserved someone who could match her ambitions, not settle for a modest, simple life. I saw her there, silent and defeated, and knew her mind was made up. I told her I had heard enough, that if she believed she was better off without me, I'd leave her to figure it out. She said she needed more time. That was the moment I realized our marriage was truly over, that she had already made her choice, her friends' opinions over our vows, her pride over our history. I packed a bag and left, walking out of a home that no longer felt like mine. I stayed at my brother's for a few days, reflecting on what had happened. I learned that her friends thrived on drama, and that Sarah's silence and compliance had given them power over us. I also learned that I deserved respect and honesty. When I finally reached her, she told me she needed more time. I told her I couldn't stay in a relationship where she prioritized her friends' approval over us. I told her that if she truly believed I was less than, then we should part ways, respectfully, honestly. I left that day realizing her friend's influence had cost us everything. Over the following months, I started fresh, moved into a small condo, focused on my career, and rebuilt my life. The weight lifted. I no longer had to walk on eggshells or feel like I was fighting to be seen. Almost a year after our divorce, I ran into Maria at the grocery store. She acted like we were old friends catching up. I told her I still blamed her and her friends for destroying what we had. She defended their intentions, saying they only wanted Sarah to be happy. But I saw through that. They weren't helping. They were tearing us apart. I learned that Sarah's new boyfriend was a successful businessman, wary of her friends' meddling. That gave me hope. Maybe she'd choose a different path, one that valued genuine connection over superficial success. In the end, her friends were right about one thing. We weren't in the same league, but they were wrong about who was settling for less. It was never me. It was the friends who thrived on others' misery, and a wife who let their opinions define her.